Welcome to the Family Bible Journey. Did you know that when you subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, that you actually make it easier for other people to find the Family Bible Journey? So please follow and subscribe. And thank you for listening. This is episode 260, season 1 of the Family Bible Journey Old Testament podcast. Today we're looking at Nehemiah chapter 3. The title of today's podcast is Doing Your Part. And our key verses for today are chapter 3, verses 1 to 5, and verse 12, where we read, When Eliashib the high priest rose up with his brothers of priests, and they built the sheep gate, they consecrated it and set its doors. They consecrated it as far as the Tower of the 100, as far as the Tower of Hananel. And next to him, the men of Jericho built, and next to them, Zakur, the son of Imri, built. The sons of Hassaniah built the fish gate. They laid its beams and set its doors, its bolts and its bars. And next to them, Meremoth, the son of Uriah, son of Hakkoz, repaired. And next to them, Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, son of Meshezabel, repaired. And next to them, Zadok, the son of Baana, repaired. And next to them, the Tekoites repaired. But their nobles would not stoop to serve their Lord. Verse 12. Next to him, Shallum, the son of Halashaheth, ruler of half the district of Jerusalem, repaired, he and his daughters. This is the word of the Lord. As the reconstruction of the walls around Jerusalem has now officially begun, we get to see in this chapter a detailed list of who did what where. And this is going to read like a genealogy for many of you. I know, not a favorite part of the Bible, but worth reading every word, because when we pay attention to this detailed account, we see a couple of interesting details that Nehemiah leaves for us that tell us a lot about the character of the people who were doing the work. I have a note on verse 5 where we hear that the nobles of the Tekoites would not do the work of rebuilding the wall. And my note there says, are they full of themselves? Are they too proud? Either way, they failed to serve the Lord in this matter. And here we have a warning not to think ourselves above the work that God has called us to do. And there is a great leadership book. It's titled Leaders Eat Last. And this principle, whether you're serving in the military, in the church, in government, in community, in the family, anywhere that you may find yourself serving as a leader, it is a great principle that the leaders will be the ones who eat last. Take care of the people who take care of you. Too often in the society that we live in today, we are seeing much damage done by those who attain positions of power or influence, or supposed positions of power influence, and wield that power for their own personal or special interests. And great damage is done when leaders take care of themselves first and let the underlings suffer with the consequences. A true leader, a good leader, a faithful and a blessed leader is someone who recognizes that if they are going to lead well, they must take care of others first. There is no one, of course, who exemplifies and personifies this principle more than Jesus, because he literally gave up his earthly life that we could be reconciled to him, so that we could be restored in a right relationship with his Father, even though we often put ourselves first, and in himself show us the blessings of good and godly and faithful leadership by putting other people first. The contrast, or the foil to that, are these noble men, quote unquote, who we are told would not stoop down, would not lower themselves to serve their Lord. And on the other hand, in verse 12, we read of a group of women, the daughters of a man named Shallum, who was a ruler of half the district of Jerusalem, who stepped up and did the work. And my note on verse 12 of chapter 3 says, I love that these women are mentioned specifically when some of the men failed to rise to the occasion. This is a wonderful example, and yet another example that we hear in our podcast of where God lifts up the females who are faithfully serving his people in a variety of ways, including these women who are making mortar and laying stones and bricks and rebuilding the wall when the supposed nobles of a different group of God's people were just too good to lower themselves or stoop down to do what was required. And in my work with churches and organizations around the country, I used to believe that there were two groups of people in society at large. One was the people who like to talk about doing things, and the second is that group who likes to actually do what is necessary, do the work that is necessary for something to succeed. And I know I've said this in earlier episodes, and so if you've heard it before, I beg your patience with me. But that third group that I discovered as I've worked with many who were supposed leaders in the church and in positions of formal authority or position or elected officials in the Lord's church is this very large group of people that have convinced themselves that talking about doing the work is actually doing the work. And it is, honestly, it is exhausting. And it is frustrating. And it is very disappointing when someone who is very interested in making the most of the time that we have, the resources that we have, the energy and the heart and passion that we have to do the Lord's work, to be surrounded by those who have convinced themselves that are doing their part just by talking about doing the work or setting up great, big, and grand plans for others to fulfill and accomplish and live into, all the while patting themselves for the nothing that they themselves are getting done. And I would dare say even that many of the people who fall into this mold actually, more often than not, get in the way of the good work of good people who are seeking to do the Lord's will in their communities than they actually help in that matter. But let us not focus on the negative here, but rather the positive of these faithful women who are lifted up as a great example of the many hundreds and thousands of faithful Jewish people who at this point in time are setting their hearts and their minds to the work that God has appointed them. Very content, not only content, I dare say excited and thrilled to be doing their part, even as we, as the Lord's people today, want to make sure that we do our part, that you do your part for the Lord's work, because that really is what this passage is about. The wonderful work that was being done in the face of opposition, in the face of many difficulties and very powerful adversaries, that God's people are going forward in faith and doing the work that God has put on their hearts and minds to do. That is a wonderful encouragement to us in today's episode. And so we close today's episode with our blessing, looking forward in the coming chapters to see how it is that these adversaries are going to arise and how they're going to try to complicate or thwart God's plans, and how Nehemiah and the faithful men and women there in Jerusalem at that point in time are going to continue to serve the Lord faithfully despite the overwhelming odds that have been arrayed against them. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to share your faith in a super easy way, just click the share button so you can send an episode to a friend in a text or an email or post on social media. Our blessing for today. May you rise to the occasion when an opportunity presents itself to serve your Lord and neighbor in love, and may you find joy and fulfillment in such work. Amen.